What's up, guys? Ronin Man here. Hey, today I want to talk about a really hilarious topic, the wedding industry. Well, it's not funny if you paid for it, but it is a hilarious industry. And I have an insight that is going to probably surprise everybody listening on the channel because I actually was a wedding minister in Japan and in China. And it was a part-time thing, and I'll tell you how it all happened. But basically what happened was I had a company in Japan, headhunting company, and I got ripped off. I got completely ripped off. Like I had a really bad situation. So what happened was basically the ins and outs of it is I needed money, right? I needed money to pay salaries. I had guys working for me. I had apartment in Tokyo. I had a house on the beach. I had cars. I had motorcycles. I had salaries for employees, and I needed quick money. I needed a way to make fucking money. So one of my friends was doing weddings, and it's kind of a well-known thing. I mean, if you search it online, it's a pretty well-known thing. Is that there's this industry in Japan and now in China where foreigners that speak Japanese can be wedding ministers. And the reason for this is because in Asia, essentially, marriages are traditionally seen as not as a romantic thing. The idea of romance, actually, a romantic love, came from the West. And this did not exist in Asia before. And if you ask any really old people in Asia, they'll tell you how they got married, and it was a completely different thing in Asia. It really was. I mean, even in the West, if you ask really old people, they'll tell you that it was more based on convenience and raising whatever it was back in the day, farming or whatever, the practicalities of a relationship. But in Asia, it's even more, way, way, way more. And so because of that, Asian women do not see Asian men as romantic, essentially. Now, that's changing, and young guys obviously fit the role just fine. But we're talking traditional here. We're talking mindset. The mindset of women we're talking, right? When you talk to the mindset of women, sometimes logic just goes out the window, right? And anyway, what they want is they want a minister who does not look Asian, basically, but who speaks the language. That's what they want. And that gives them a feeling that I'm being married, it's romantic, and that's just enough. That's what they need, And everything else is essentially a Western wedding. So, got the dresses, you got the location, sometimes you have a band, usually not so much in Asia, it's usually not a band, but there's the food and there's the whole thing. So I'll just roll down kind of what I learned, and I think you guys are going to get a good laugh out of this one. It's pretty hilarious, actually. It really is. Fuck. I laughed the whole time I did it. I got to tell you that. It was a crack up. Like literally, I was crying sometimes laughing. Okay, so what happened was my friend Jay was a wedding minister, and he was making big money, and I knew that. And he was making like big money. Like I don't know what he was making per year doing it, but he only worked weekends, so Saturday and Sunday, and I think he was making it was way over $100,000, and mostly cash, not taxed back then. And I was like, whoa, and he was doing weddings at Disneyland, which was the kind of the peak of weddings. Like, you got different levels of weddings in Japan. The ultimate wedding, actually, for most people, is at Disneyland. They have like a whole wedding situation there, and I think they ride on the gondolas and everything. I never did a Disney wedding, but I got pretty high up, and I did some interesting things. So I'll tell you what I learned. Okay, so I started out, I remember Jay asked me, he said he knew that I needed money, right? I needed to pay salaries. I was like, I needed cash, and I don't have time, right? So I didn't have time to work because I had a business to run on the weekdays. So weekends were free. And so I said, hey, Jay, sounds like you're doing pretty well. Could you kind of help me out here? Is there any possibility I could do this? And Jay was like, oh, yeah, your Japanese is amazing. You can totally do it. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was like really easy. So he said, I'll introduce you to my guy. So he introduced me to his guy. I went down there. He had a small office. somewhere near Shinagawa or something, kind of at like a back road there. And I went in, and the guy said, basically the guy gave me the lowdown. He said, okay, your Japanese is fine. He says, no problem. He says, you got a script. We have a script. You have to memorize the script in Japanese, where you read the Bible and all this stuff. You have to like do romantic verses, and it's the whole thing. It's the whole wedding thing, right? I do, and everything, right? The Asian kind of tradition for weddings, Western weddings, which is most people, just most people getting Western weddings now, is that there's a script. And most couples don't want to change the script. The script is basically the script, and they want a good script. Because it's not a tradition in Asia, so, it's not a thing. Like, the girls don't have this idea that they're going to change it to be unique. They basically are pretty happy with a good script. So my script got better and better and better as I did more and more weddings. So he gave me a script, and I was like, okay, memorize this. And so then I'm memorizing. I remember I called Jay. I was quite nervous because it's kind of a big deal. Like, it's, there's a video camera running. People fly from all over the world to come to weddings. Everybody's looking at you. It's like a big deal, right? And I had never been married, so I didn't really know much about weddings, right? And I was obviously not interested in being married, and I was actively fucking avoiding getting married, right? You know what I mean? Like, so either way, I called Jay. I said, hey, Jay, I got my wedding on Saturday, and I said, I'm just nervous, can you help me walk me through it? So I went down to McDonald's. Jay lived in Chiba, which is kind of outside of Tokyo. So I went down there, and I remember we went to the second floor of this McDonald's, and Jay had this Elvis impersonator friend of his who was in his 70s, and he was there, and he was gonna like. It was a hilarious situation anyway. He had like this big pork chop, sideburns, and everything, and he had made his living as a Elvis impersonator in Japan, and so either way, he was a crack up. So we were all sitting there. The guy is kind of famous, actually. I forgot his name, but he was pretty famous, actually. He had done a lot of parties and everything in Japan. And so I'm there with Jay, and Jay has a good sense of humor. So we're joking around, and he's like, okay, go ahead and say the thing. So I tried, and then he showed me how to say it smoothly, without so much looking down. It's complicated Japanese, actually. It's not simple Japanese. It's formal, quite formal. So I needed to practice a lot. And so what you basically do is you look down at the script, you glance down, and then you kind of look up and say it with emotion. That's the key, emotion. So Jay said, basically, I was practicing and everything. And Jay said, look, he said, don't be nervous. He said, look, here's the way weddings are. He says, because he was like a really successful wedding minister. He says, the deal is this. When you get out there and everybody's looking at you, and you got the script in Japanese, and it's like nervousness is all-time high. Everybody's stress is high. Video cameras are running, pictures, old people are shaking, young kids are throwing flowers. The pressure, everybody's looking at you as the expert. He said, there's no way to prepare for something like this. He says, you just go out there, and there's two kinds of people. He said, basically, there's two kinds of people. There's people that can handle the pressure and people that can't. So he says, you're going to find out. As soon as you get out there in the wedding, you're going to find out if you can handle the pressure. And if you can handle the pressure, then you're good. He says, most people can't. So he said, most people try one wedding. He said, that's why the guy gave you easy. He's like, go ahead and just try. Because he had no way of knowing if I could handle the pressure. So he's like, just go out there and just find out. He goes, worst case scenario is you get out there and you flub it up and you look like an idiot. And the wedding, it doesn't go well. He says, that's the price they pay. Some people can't do it. So get out there. He said, just get out there, practice all you can, but just get out there and do it. So I was like, okay. That was like perfect advice for me. So I was like, okay, yeah, all right. I can either do it or I can't. And if it's bad, it's one wedding and who cares, So, it's like, you know what I mean? This is the process. Like, no one can get around it. So, just doing my best. So I'll go out there. I practiced. I remember it was a Friday night, Friday late afternoon, and we were practicing. And then he said, "You're good. And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, you're good." And so the guy had let me there's these wedding minister like robes that you wear with these, I don't know what you call them, but these collar things, and so he had lent me those. I know Jay had lent me those. Jay was super cool because those were expensive. The priest robe things fucking expensive, right? And all I needed was like a suit, pants underneath, and then nice shoes, which no problem. So I showed up at the wedding, and I was like, I wonder what's going to happen here. I'm standing there, and everybody comes in, Well, first, before the wedding started, we just kind of, it was funny because I think looking back, the situation was that this wedding was already ready to go. Most weddings in Japan, you'd have a practice day. So you'd have like a dress rehearsal where everybody comes and everybody's like practicing. Everybody's standing here. The bride walks down the aisle. The music plays. You announce everything, and then it's just like the whole wedding happens exactly like the wedding the day before. The dress rehearsal, but this time there was no rehearsal because I guess the wedding minister had not showed up or something happened. So either way, I had to just do it like dry. So I didn't even know because the thing is, I didn't even know the people, so I was kind of nervous because I'm a people person, right? So I wanted to kind of know who they are and why they're getting married and how long they've been together and kind of get an idea of that kind of stuff. But either way, I didn't have a chance to do that, so I went there and I knew their names, and so I greeted them. Greeted the parents and everything, and then the singer girls were super cool. There was a whole wedding, like we had a team, right? And every time I did a wedding, that team was there. There was like a manager guy, and then there was these girls who would sing, and they were the experts. The singer girls, they sung at every wedding. So they would sing. I think they did about 6 weddings a day, every Saturday and Sunday. So. They really knew the industry. So once I realized that, I thought, hey, these girls are good information. So I started to make friends with the girls, and they were quite friendly, and all of them were attractive. Like they're all pretty, because basically you don't want an ugly girl singing at your wedding, right? So weddings are all decided. Everything is decided by women. That's the number one thing you have to know about weddings. Nothing is decided by the man from a business perspective, like nothing. And anybody in the industry knows that, right? So the prettiness of the girls had nothing to do with guys at all. This was completely women's decision, and they picked always pretty girls, always skinny and always pretty, which is funny because they always complain about that. But no girls would pick ugly girls to be at their wedding as a singer in Japan. But anyway, interesting, right? And so either way, so the girls were quite nice, and they're all bubbly and everything. They were basically, like looking back, the girls in the wedding industry were the type of girls that most guys would want to marry, right? You know what I mean? They're pretty, they're bubbly, they're young, they're skinny, they're smiling, that kind of thing, right? They look happy and healthy, right? And everybody wants a wife like that, right? So that's I guess that's kind of the kind of thing. Kind of same thing as at the Swinsons here, the ice cream place. They always have like a skinny hot girl, right, at the ice cream place. Or if you eat a lot of ice cream, you don't look like that, right? But that's what they do that because you want to think that, right? You want to think that, hey, I can eat all this ice cream and I still can look super hot and all that. So the girls were like, hey, don't worry, you're gonna be fine. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went out there, had my script, the wedding started, and I was pretty nervous. Like I'm a speaker. I love public speaking, and I love people. So all these people was interesting for me, and the whole situation was very interesting. I gotta tell you that, super interesting. The whole wedding was I was fascinated. But when I got out there, I was like in a time zone black hole, whatever you call it. Like the whole thing went like 2 seconds. Like I don't even remember the wedding, but apparently it went well. So afterwards, the wedding guy's like, thumbs up. He's like, can you do another wedding in 20 minutes? And I'm like, and each wedding I got $200 for. So I could do sometimes I did 5 weddings in a day. That's $1,000. And that was cash. That was no tax. That was in an envelope that day. So I'd leave with $1,000 from a Saturday work. And all I did was I would do 5 weddings. Each wedding is 20 minutes start to finish. 20 minutes, that's it. So I basically worked, what is that? Less than 2 hours. And I would total, of work, a lot of rest in between. And actually not that much rest either. There was 10-minute break between weddings. Yeah, let me tell you how it works. So the Japanese wedding industry is like it's like a machine. Like they've got it down like a science. They've got these wedding halls The weddings were at hotels, wedding halls, which were just basically buildings built specifically to look romantic. So they were like these huge, overblown, like romantic. You expect like Romeo to be like, yelling out from the atrium or something. It's like there's like Greek columns everywhere and like lace all over the place, and it's really well lit, and flowers and music and smells, and it's kind of like this perfect wedding. It's kind of like it's like a church, but it's like a church on steroids, because it's a church for romance, essentially. But it's still got the church. It looks like a church, basically, but not really, because it's so different, right? It's like a Disney-fied church. So those were like nice places for weddings. They were expensive, those ones. They were like 2-story, 3-story, and then there would be like a spiral staircase and all this stuff. People would come down, and the bride, and this and that. And so, but here's the system. It's really simple. Like the guests would be outside, and I actually don't even know what they were doing, if they were standing there or sitting or whatever. Probably sitting, but they would basically, there was a door to the church, and the music would come on, dun dun dun, dun, and then the people would before that, the music would come on, and then the guests would start filling in. So they'd open the doors, the guests would come in, and they're Japanese, so they would be very orderly, and they would just almost like they're in a subway. They'd just come in, file in, everybody would sit down, people would, uncomfortably laugh, and, kids would, drop flowers, and things would happen, and then everybody would laugh, quietly, of course. Japanese, right? Everybody's very, and so, they would basically to come in and sit down, and the music would be on, and then I'd be up front, so I'd be standing there kind of greeting people, and there'd be the 3 singers, the girls behind me, either to my right or my left, depending on the venue. And then all of a sudden, dun 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 dun, and then the bride would come down with her father. But there was all kinds of variety, because sometimes the father wouldn't be, they'd be divorced, or he'd be dead, or whatever. So she'd come down with somebody, some guy. And it was always a guy, yeah. And then she would come down, and basically, typical wedding would go on. And I would do my thing. And I remember Jay told me, he gave me great advice, actually. He said, Ronin, he says, the thing that you need to do, he says, the thing, there's 2 things. After I passed the first test, he said, okay, now then the next thing. He says, the next thing in a wedding, there's 2 things. One is, can you do it? Can you handle the pressure? And can you do a good job, make people happy, right? In Japanese. And the second thing is can you make people cry? Okay. Can you make people cry? And so, because you're saying these like meaningful, like, love statements, like you're reading the Bible, like fantasies of love. You're really like laying it on thick, right? In Japanese, right? And so I was like, oh, I got you. It's like I realized it's like an emotional thing, right? It's a connection with the audience. So I tried to, to read and to speak in a way that was meaningful, or, like very, very, it was like, I got it down, essentially. And then my weddings, people started crying at the weddings, and so then I knew I was like on, like that was when I started making pretty big money doing this, and so I would see someone start crying, and I thought, okay, all right, I'm nailing the fuck out of this, which is so funny, because I actually, the whole wedding industry is such a fucking joke. I mean, it's so hilarious. I'm gonna lay down all the crap that goes on. Oh my god, it's so bad. Oh, it's so fake. Oh, can't tell you. If you're ever, anybody is working in the wedding industry, you should ask them about this. Everybody talks about the divorce industry. Oh, the fucking wedding industry is hilarious, man. Oh, so like, I've got people crying. Now here I am. I'm in front, right? And like, I've got like 1 million girlfriends at the time, right? So I'm just boning chicks like crazy, and like, it's just so funny to me to see this whole scenario. It's like this whole subculture I just didn't know anything about, right? Yeah, I'd been to a couple weddings in my life, but I tried to avoid them, basically. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get dressed up and buy presents, and a Saturday, wearing a fucking suit. I wear a suit on the weekdays, right? Back then, so I didn't want to wear a suit on the weekends, so fuck that, right? So I always tried to avoid weddings at all costs, but I had to go to a few weddings, so I kind of had a basic idea. But when you go to only a couple weddings, like most people, they never figure out the wedding industry because they're just at a few, right? If you do 5 weddings a day, a couple times a week, you really start to understand what's going on. It becomes super, super clear. Like, it's such a joke. And so, like, for one thing, what's interesting was all the singer girls would be the kind of girls. The reason why they got into this industry in the first place is because they wanted to get married, right? They're like very interested. They're very like dreaming of getting married. But those girls, after, doing the wedding business, none of them were interested in marriages. That was really interesting because I talked to them. I never dated any of them, but I just talked to them, and we were quite friendly, and they were all like, yeah, whatever, like it's like when you could see the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, it's just not that pretty of a sight, and so even the girls were not interested. And that was interesting. Now, the guys never said anything. They would never tell me anything, but obviously they knew what a joke it was, because it was so fake. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. The bride would come down. Okay, so the door would open, music would play, and that was, let's just set a timer right now. There's a timer, boom, click, and a 20-minute timer. And the guests would come in a certain amount of minutes. The bride would come in a certain amount of minutes. And it was all timed by the music. The music is your timer, right? So then the bride would come down, and then the groom would come, and then we would, do all kinds of speeches and stuff, and the families would be on the sides, the best man and whatever you call it, the friends, and everybody on both sides. And that was when I would do my thing. That was when I would, talk to them, and as I got better at it, I started to know who they were because I'd talk to them. Most wedding ministers in Japan didn't really care. They'd just come in, do the wedding, find out their names, whatever. But for me, I'm a people person, so I always wanted to find out more about them. So I'd find out where they met and, all this kind of stuff. And I remember, things about them when I did the wedding. Even if I had 5 in a day, it's like 5 people, 10 people, it's easy to remember, So I'd kind of like, hey, how's it going, kind of under my breath, And then they would they seemed like they really liked it, right? So, and the families really liked me too. Sometimes they'd invite me to go do stuff afterwards, to eat and stuff. And sometimes I would run into them later in public, and this was kind of uncomfortable actually, because I had met them in this weird circumstance as the wedding minister, right? I met the manager of the Nikko hotel in Shanghai outside of the wedding industry. I was doing another business, and it was like we looked at each other like, oh. He looked at me, I looked at him, we're both like, oh man, I don't know if the wedding didn't work out or I don't know what happened, but either way we just kind of looked at each other. It was like nobody mentioned it, right? But he knew, and I knew. I was like, oh shit, that's the guy. That's the guy for the wedding, right? And oh yeah, speaking of funny things, fucking funny things. So Japanese weddings, right? Everything is very, what do you call it? Subdued, very subdued. And it's not like the Japanese weddings are not like, they're not boisterous at all. There's no sense of like a party or anything. Western weddings are kind of unpredictable. Some people, they like to have more fun. They might have a punk rock wedding or something. Japan, no, they didn't have that back then. I don't know if they do now, but they didn't have it back then at all. It was all very standard. I don't think there's many. The West wedding industry it's so standardized. You would not believe is women talk about how progressive everybody is and societies move forward. But I can tell you this, that there's been hundreds of startups who've taken serious money in Silicon Valley trying to disrupt the wedding industry, but it just doesn't work. And the reason is because women make all the decisions at weddings, and every girl wants the same thing. She wants a very traditional wedding. And that's like rigid fucking stereotypes. That's what she wants. She wants the rings. She wants the dresses. She wants the music. She wants the priest or whatever. She wants the minister, man or woman, doesn't matter. Same, right? But it's all very traditional. That she wants the pews, she wants the everything, the colors is all very. It's the same. It is the fucking same. And this is one thing I really learned in the wedding industry is like, obviously I'm not interested in getting married, but if I ever were to get married, okay, or to say advise a son or daughter on a wedding or a friend, I would tell them, like, do not, okay, fucking bother trying to differentiate yourself, because it is what couples spend like insane amount of money and time trying to decide, like, should we have the duck because ducks don't fly, but they have all these discussions about every little aspect of the cards and the this and the that and the this and that. I can tell you this from watching a million weddings is that stuff does not matter at all. Like, literally does not matter, and nobody will even notice. Any small things you've done have been done a million times. So it's all such a joke. It's like, I can't believe that whole families fight and stop getting along with people over these issues, you guys. Like, there's venal attacks. There's smear campaigns. There's disenfranchised people who won't talk to each other because of these fucking stupid things in weddings. And the truth is, as somebody who did a lot of weddings, I can tell you that you don't even notice these things. Like, they're so subtle. Like, none of the people that go to the weddings, right? None of the guests, they don't go to enough weddings to even know that it's unique, right? You know what I mean? Like, they don't even know. They don't even know that you did something like, you paid like a lot more money for this one unique thing. Like, nobody even knows, cares, none of that. Like, it's the whole weddings. It's just incredible waste of money, incredible, and it's over in 20 minutes. So the Japanese would do this. They'd come in, everything would happen. I'd do the birds, and then the big thing was kiss the bride, and they would kiss, and Japanese, so no tongues, very, very careful, stayed, little kiss on the chin, on the lips there, and sometimes even on the cheek, and then they would it would kind of, the pressure would be off, because the truth is, it wasn't just me as the minister who was nervous. It was everybody in the wedding. Everybody's uncomfortable in weddings. Like, everybody's miserable, basically, for the whole wedding. Everybody's like wondering if they look right. Everybody's like worried that they dropped a flower here and there. The minister's worried about what he's saying. The bride is like, here's my moment, and she's like, this is like her big thing, and the groom is like, he's not stupid. He's like, shit, if I make one mistake today, it's going to be on film. I'm going to look, you know what I mean? She'll never let me live it down. And then you talk about the mothers-in-law and the mothers and fathers and friends. Everybody's like super worried, because everybody knows that weddings are often, they're like almost the cause of family feuds and murder. I mean, like, seriously, like, weddings, what happens at weddings, the negative effects are really serious. I've seen it in my life. I'm not going to say details because it's a little too personal in my family, but I can tell you this: if you don't do things right and someone takes offense at a wedding, it's considered like, and this wasn't something I did. This was something I witnessed somebody do, and somebody else took offense, and they basically said in their mind that this person is like this, and now, this is forever. Like, it was shown on my wedding, like, it's like this truth-telling fucking bullshit, and that was it. Like, for 20, 30 years, they were fighting after that wedding, and it was just over smallest thing, the most venal, like, minuscule, fucking meaningless thing. As a person who did so many weddings, I can tell you, it's just all so mean. I mean, I guess the meaningful part is the one part of the wedding that I liked was the fact that it was an excuse for everybody to get together. Like, I look at my brother's wedding when my brother got married, and my grandfather came, and that was my grandfather was probably the one most important person in my childhood, He was always there for me. He always believed in me. He watched me very closely. He cared about me. He really cared about what I thought about things. He cared about my interest in woodworking, and he would take the time to explain things. He would admit that he didn't understand something. He wasn't like this fake expert on everything. But either way, he came to my brother's wedding, and so did a lot of other people, and it was a great opportunity to kind of get everybody together, like a party. That's the advantage. This is the one thing about weddings that's cool. Weddings and funerals is that your friends, your family, for once, everybody's gonna get together, and there's value in that, because in my brother's case, people came from overseas. A lot of people came overseas. People came from all over the country, and they all gathered, and everybody got to know each other a little bit. It's like a memory. It's a memory. I met my brother's wife's sister, who I never met after that, only that one time, but it was a very good memory. It was a good memory. We hung out for a few days. We laughed. I thought she was awesome. It was a good experience. So I guess I'm not going to say that weddings are useless, because they do bring people together, and that is a good thing, because human beings like relating to other people is human relations is like, that's all we got here. Like that's probably the most important thing there is your friendship, your love, respect, your experience with other people. I mean, there's only so much experience you can have with the dirt and then the stars. You know what I mean? They're valuable, but let's face it, human beings are really probably our biggest thing, and it's our biggest challenge is improving human relations, having friends, a network of friends. And every study, for example, of longevity shows that an older person's group of friends or network of friends, and the depth of the relationship, how often they contact, what they talk about, these are the things that determine the length of life, more than health, more than heart, more than how much they exercise. It's way more important is if you feel like you have loving, supportive people around you. It's so important. And this is what I worry about MGTOW so much, because so many people try to cut out all women in their life, and they're cutting out 50% of your social, your network of social connections, which is very important, especially as you get older. It's like having human friends, having a network of people to ask, to talk to. It's incredibly important, all the way through your life. I mean, it's obviously important in high school having friends, but it's important all the way up to the end. And I recommend really understanding that and accepting that, and working on your skills with people. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next episode, Ronin Man episode, is something that I think is a long lost art of being wrong and admitting you're wrong and apologizing. That'll be my next video. But basically, like this wedding thing, I'll just wrap it up. The whole thing's a total scam. It's a total money maker. Everybody gets together is the good thing, but the lack of innovation and the rigidity and stereotypes that surround weddings, and then the fake subtle distinctions between things that don't matter and nobody notices and aren't even real, really tell you a lot. I mean, what can you see from that as a guy, as a man, right? Obviously, you're not going to make any decisions at a wedding, right? You're not going to. It's not up to you. Nobody. This is the one thing you will have no say so, right? And then you have a rigid, stereotypical, kind of sexist situation, right? That is perpetuated by women. And then it's probably the most expensive outlay of cash in your entire life, except for buying a home and things like that, right? So it's quite funny that nobody really dissects this complete joke of an industry, complete joke. I think the one wedding I went to that was good when I was in college, one of my friends, Lance, he had a wedding in somewhere, I can't remember where it was exactly, but somewhere near Santa Barbara, and he was loaded. He was a developer, and he had money, and so he said, "Look, I'm rented a bunch of these huts up in the mountain." It was like a camping with hut thing, And he said, "Look, I paid for everything. You guys all come You don't have to give any money. You don't have to give any presents if you don't want to, because we were all in college, right? And he's like, don't even worry about anything. Just come and have a great time. And everybody had a great time. We laughed the whole time. And I went to another wedding in Hawaii that was a similar type of attitude. It's like, guys, you're not here to support us. You know what I mean? You guess. We want you to fucking do whatever you want to do. Have fun. Come for many days together. Get to know each other. Laugh together. Fucking, you know what I mean? Do all the things that people do. Meet people, fuck together. You know, that's the other thing that happens at weddings a lot, is people have sex. A lot of people meet and have sex. There's a lot of sexual energy, okay, from the women in weddings, okay? I've had women after weddings call me drunk from a hotel room and say, come and fuck me. Like, I'm in this room, come and fuck me. Like, I've never had women say that to me, but this is like something where, this is a woman I never kissed, nothing. She just knew me from the wedding, but they somehow got my number and just said, hey, just come over, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm horny. It's like 3 a.m. And I did. And it was quite funny because I thought to myself, every time I did that, I thought, man, I had best time at that wedding. You know what I mean? Like, I had the best of anybody, like of the bride and the groom, of everybody, you know, I like had the best time. Because I mean, this wasn't just sex. It was sex with a new girl who was begging for it. Just straight into it, and usually it was a pretty attractive girl too. So weddings and sex are pretty hilarious. So that's another advantage. If you ever do go to a wedding, you should try to get laid for sure, because every girl wants to get laid at a wedding. So you should definitely think about that if you go. If somebody wants something, there's nothing wrong with being the guy who fulfills it, right? In other words, if I'm hungry, okay, I'm going to eat food somewhere, right? I'm just going to eat. Like, I'm fucking hungry, I'm going to eat. So if you serve me food and I give you money, there's nothing wrong with that. If a girl's at a wedding and she wants to bone, like, trust me, someone's going to give it to her, and it may as well be you. You know, it's not like you're coming in and doing something. This is what's wanted. The service is needed. The service is is preferred. Go in and do it. Be the man. Be that guy. Don't be the guy who pays for everything and acts like an idiot. So let me think of some of the funny things that happen at weddings. Oh man, I tell you, one was the worst. Oh my God, I could not believe this one. I went to this one. It was a rehearsal, right? And there was a girl there, a woman, was getting married, and she had this guy. Like, as soon as I saw him, the guy just looked very weak. You know, very, very weak. And she was like, really, like, I went to like millions of weddings, but this was different. This was completely different. This woman was like, literally, he was like her slave. Like, I could not believe it. And she was just like yelling at him, berating him in front of everybody. So apparently I was the only one who didn't, wasn't aware. Like, his family, they all knew, right? You could see on their faces. Everybody was, this was, maybe they were embarrassed that I was watching it, you know what I mean? But like, they were not surprised by what was going on. And she was just like, you're stupid. You're just sit over here. You always do. This is during the wedding rehearsal. Like most wedding rehearsals, my God, they were looking in each other's eyes. They were kissing. They were like waiting. They were like shy. Like this was most wedding things. What do you call it? The day before, right? The rehearsal. But this girl was completely different. And I looked at her and I thought to myself, because I just thought, I looked at her really seriously, man. And I just looked at her like, man, bitch, I will fucking tame you. And I looked at her like right in front of everybody, like, this would not go down with me, baby. I would have you down. And she looked at me, and I swear to God, it was like, she knew exactly what my look was. Exactly. And that's what she wanted. That's what she wanted. She was dying for a man to say, no, this shit is not going down, baby. And, and like, I honestly, I was sitting there, we were doing a wedding rehearsal. There's like these little, what do you call it? Like cardboard cutouts of all the things in the wedding. Cause it's not at the venue. It's like at this room. Right. And so it looks, it's got these cardboard cutouts of everything that's going to be real the next day. And so there was no place to fuck her besides behind this cardboard thing. Now, I think she wanted me to. I honestly think this girl, she wanted me to fuck her behind the cardboard thing. I swear to God. and she wanted to moan so everybody could hear. I swear to God, I kid you not, I could read it in her face. It was so obvious. This girl wanted it so bad. And I honestly thought about it. I thought, should I take, I'm the minister, the wedding minister, should I take her behind the cardboard and just rail her or not? And I thought, no, I can't do it because the cardboard's going to fall over or something, right? I'm like, no, I can't do it. And I didn't do it. But she was disappointed, I'll tell you that. And it was just a hilarious moment in a wedding. When you're doing something like this, you really see the raw people, And honestly, I felt terrible for the guy too. So that was the other reason why I didn't do it. Because I looked at the guy. I mean, of course, now the guy, of course, he has his own responsibility, all that stuff. But still, you don't know the guy's total story, like how he got like that, what happened, how he was raised. I don't know his whole story, but it was so sad to watch. Oh, fuck, it was sad. A lot of the marriages were sad. A lot of the couples didn't really like each other. You could tell. They were not romantic. A lot of couples, you could just see they were doing it for another reason, like say for their parents, And then there was the odd wedding, where the couple were actually in love. There was that type of couple. But then there wasn't many of those actually. Once it gets to the wedding stage, love is pretty much over. That's my take. Is that maybe in the first few dates you have romantic love, but by the time you've gone through the planning, you've talked to the families, you've done the invitations, you've done all the boring things. Everything is so planned out now, and then there's just nothing left. I think back in the day, maybe in the pioneer days, when weddings just happened on a Saturday, there was no planning. It was like, hey, we're gonna have a wedding tomorrow. Please come. And the couple was virgins. They were virgins until the honeymoon. Maybe there was some romantic love back then. I don't know. I can't really guess, but I can tell you this. There's nothing romantic about a wedding. Nothing. Like, literally, don't worry about romance because there ain't going to be no romance. It's like this, some people will pretend like there is. In fact, good wedding guests, if you go to a wedding, I recommend pretending a lot. Put on your like Brad Pitt, Harrison Ford imitation and pretend like you're watching something romantic happen because people are paying a lot of money for that. And I recommend, it's kind of a sign of respect, but the truth is there's nothing romantic about it. None of the couples are excited about the honeymoon. Like nobody's thinking, oh man, because the old days, right? The honeymoon was like, hey, I'm gonna get some pussy, man. She's like, what the hell's gonna happen to me? Like, gonna have sex. There's this kind of thing, right? First time. Like this for the rest of my life. But today, with divorces all the time, and with everybody's obviously living together, cohabitating. The whole wedding industry is a complete joke. I mean, just from start to finish. Like every single tradition that there's out there is like not real anymore. And everybody at some weddings they pretend, you'll see some of the guys, like let's say you got a bunch of like the bros, right? You got the guys, they're all from London and they're like their friends getting married to let's say, and I saw this many times, there was like a hot Japanese girl and there'd be a bunch of guys from London. You could tell they were like successful guys, cool guys. And close friends too. That was the other thing. You could see that most people don't have many friends. That was like really obvious in most weddings. And that was very sad. I don't want that to be you. You got to have friends. Friends are so important. But most weddings, you can see very clearly that almost nobody has friends. Like they have family, but not friends. Like not real fucking friends. But either way, in this wedding, the London one, they had this real tight group of guys and I saw them joking around and they were acting like, hey, the honeymoon, they were like egging them on and stuff, but it was all a farce. It was all fake because everybody knows that, the couples had sex a million times and nobody was looking forward to anything because they cost them so much money. Now they have this like debt and you know what I mean? Like it's like he already knows what he's going to get. And the more you know about women, if you watch my Marriages Are Doomed video, you'll know that the wedding is kind of the end of any kind of romance or, there's no women that are looking forward to the honeymoon, okay? This is the thing. You have to do it, but no one's looking forward to it. It's so fucking sad. It's such a fucking farce, man. I can't even tell you, like, the guy is just get this. The guy is doing the wedding for her, okay? Every decision is made by her. Every decision, okay? Every wedding planner. And I'm talking from a business perspective. I'm not talking like my personal experience. Like, oh, my opinion, this. No, I'm talking like the reality. Anybody who runs a wedding business, you ask them, who decides this, who decides this? Every detail is decided by the woman, period, okay? And then, so basically the guy's doing it for her, right? To make her happy, okay? So he won't lose her. He doesn't want her to spread her legs for another guy. So he's getting married, right? And sometimes there's another reason, but that's one of the biggest reasons why guys get married. And they might be doing it to have children. That's a good reason to get married, if you ask me. Probably the only good reason that I can think of. But either way, I can't say anything I was going to say. But yeah, it's just the whole thing is such a farce. I can't, like, the girl's not even looking forward to the honeymoon anymore. Like, I don't know how many years ago or decades ago women look forward to honeymoons. I guess maybe in the 60s, maybe like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, maybe women look forward to the honeymoon. You know, now a woman might look forward to the honeymoon, but only because it's at XYZ resort and, you know, there's going to be XYZ food, or, you know, they're going to see this event or something, right? Attend this event, but it's not like what a honeymoon was for. A honeymoon was for excitement. It was almost like it was almost like sheer joy of embarking, breaking away from your family, creating yourself as an adult, your own family, you know, taking responsibility for life, creating things. You know, like there was some meaning in it, but there's just nothing now. There's nothing. The girls don't even want to go on the honeymoon, I bet. I bet the girls, they probably want to get banged by some other guy on the honeymoon. I'm guessing, right? It's the idea that the girl's like foaming at the mouth for her husband on the honeymoon. I never saw that. I can tell you that. I never saw that. Ever. Not once. And I'm pretty good at reading girls' faces. I mean, I was with them for 2 days, right? I would be there for the rehearsal and then for the wedding, and I never saw that. So basically, like, I don't know what the final conclusion is, but I can tell you, like, I had a very murky understanding of what a wedding was before I became a wedding minister. Oh, by the way, when you want to become a wedding minister in Japan, you just have to, there's a church, I forget what it's called. It's not the Moonies or Reunification. There's some other similar name, independent something, blah, blah. And you basically have to listen to this speech online, and then you can order your certificate, and then you get that in the mail, and then that gives you the right to do weddings and to forgive sins. I'm not kidding. I'm not totally serious. You can look online, see if you can find it. I forget the name of it, but it's fucking hilarious. So I have the right to forgive sins and also to do weddings. Yeah. So you get that. You have to get that certificate, because that way, if the couple asks for it, you can say, "Hey, I'm certified." It's one of these churches that doesn't follow the rules of the other churches. It's kind of a loophole as a way to become a minister. I think there's actually more people in the whole ministry industry who use this than you think, you know, because it's like you don't need any study or no seminary, you know, no need to learn Greek or Latin. You can just boom, 5 minutes, listen to a speech, pay some money, get a certificate in the mail, and you are a minister, baby. For your sins are forgiven by Ronin Man. So, guys, there it is. There's the. What do you guys think? Are you guys get married? Tell me what you think about this, and if you guys had a different experience, or if you saw something more meaningful than what I saw. I didn't see nothing, and I'm just going to end. I'll say, there is value in friends and family. Okay, so getting together is good for whatever reason, just because life is short. My grandfather is gone now. He's passed away, and I'm super glad that we went to my brother's wedding, because that was one of the last times I saw him. Now, I flew out to Minnesota to see him after that, but I mean, it was one of the last times when we had a chance to really hang out, was a very important figure in my life. And I lived overseas, so I mean that makes it more difficult. But so I'm grateful my brother got married just for that reason, And so I do see value in getting together. But man, I tell you, this ancient bastardized service that's going on today, man, it is really bald-faced bullshit, man. I tell you that. It is straight up fake. Everybody is fake in the whole thing. The people that do the business, the ministers, they are full of crap. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, this is funny. This is so funny. Okay, so I was getting a coffee. In California recently, right? I was at this coffee shop that I often go to, and it's in the harbor. And there was a guy sitting next to me, an older guy, with this young couple. And I could hear them talking because it was quiet. We were sitting outside, and it was the minister, and they were going to get married. It was like the first time I'm used to the Asian wedding thing. I've been to, obviously I've done a bunch of those in China too. But I didn't know much about the Western one. So I kind of thought, in my mind, the Western one was more romantic and more traditional or whatever than the Asian one, which is total business, right? And so I was quite interested because I was like, oh, no way. Because I could hear him. Like the minister was counseling them. He said, are you sure you're ready for this? And first it was just him and the bride, and then he was talking to her. But the funny thing was, this fucking guy was a dirty bastard. I'm not kidding. He was looking down her top, and he was like, this guy. I'm not kidding. This minister. I'm not going to say where it was because I don't want to give. I do not want this, but this, I'm telling you, Ronin Man knows this shit. This is 100%. This guy was dirty as fuck, okay? He was looking down the bride's top, and he was like basically talking about sex, like saying, hey, are you sure you're ready for this? Are you ready? Like, oh, baby, you ready for what you're going to get on the honeymoon? That's almost how bad it was. And the girl, she pretended like it wasn't happening. This was hilarious. The guy was like basically licking his lips, looking down her top, and she was like, he's the minister, this is all good. Oh man, the guy could have boned her like my girl in the wedding, man. Oh God. And so then the groom came, or whatever, the guy was gonna get married, and then he was like really rigid, like, yeah, they were both really young, And I was watching, and the young guy was there, and now the lascivious minister kind of laid off a little bit once the guy came. He really toned it down a lot, but he was still doing it. And I thought it was so funny how, if you asked any of those people like rationally, is this guy hitting on the groom or the bride? Everybody, like the couple themselves, would say, yeah, the guy totally wanted to fuck me, and the guy would be like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, he's a minister, he's not supposed to be doing that, right? Rationally, you would see that. Like, even the groom, what he saw was enough to know that this guy was sexually titillating and playing mind games, and the girl was going along with it too, right in front of the groom. And this is like, I don't know when it was, right before their wedding, right? Because I could hear they're talking about the wedding coming up and the date and this and that. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, even in the West, it's the same stuff. Like, it's such a corrupt industry, and the girls, like, there's so lack of romance. I kind of think now that kind of like my Marriage is Doomed video, where it's like a woman cheating is like the hottest thing because it's like she's not supposed to be doing it. You should really watch that video if you haven't. It's probably my best, Ronin Man's best video. But I think weddings are the same thing, man. I think if you were like a dirty dog, you could be just pounding the brides the day before the weddings, and they would be hot too, because the brides, it's just something in women. There's something about them that it's something biological. I think it's biological. I think there's something biological in them that wants to get rammed right before they make a commitment to a guy, or obviously afterwards too, but especially as they're making the commitment. There's something in the woman that it's like, she wants it, man. She fucking wants it. And if the groom who was watching his wife being, verbally seduced in front of him, I mean, that's, to me, it's just the whole thing is so sick. It's just so meaningless too, and so expensive. And you talk about women being, like not taken seriously, women not being listened to, their needs and their wants and their desires and their true self not being listened to. If you want to see a real example of somebody not being listened to, not being cared about, you watch a wedding and you watch the groom. Next time you go to a wedding, you watch the fucking groom and tell me, is this guy, are his needs being listened to? Is he being taken seriously? Is because he's making a commitment. The guy's making a commitment, right, for the rest of his life. The guy is making a very serious commitment, especially with today's family courts. The groom is making a serious commitment. The girl can walk away anytime she wants, but the guy, he's making a legal financial commitment. And is he being listened to? Is he being taken seriously? And does anybody care? Has anybody ever talked about this? I've never heard feminists talk about this. Like, dude, like the whole wedding industry is like, the guy's like, I mean, every old man knows this, but the guy is like replaceable and meaningless at a wedding. He doesn't even matter. As long as he looks okay and has enough money to pay for a nice wedding and everybody comes together, it's all good. Nobody even cares. Nobody at the wedding really even cares if they stay married or anything, other than the fact that they wouldn't want to buy an expensive gift if they're going to get divorced quickly, which is often the case, right? So these days, when you buy gifts, you're thinking, what are the odds they're going to get divorced like in 6 months, right? Should I buy an expensive gift? Should I even go? She got divorced before. Should I even go, right? That kind of thing is calculated, right? Naturally, I don't know, man. I think it's so outdated. The whole thing is just, it's just fucking sick, It's just a waste of money and like madness, Total mad. I mean, I'm grateful because I needed that money very, very badly as a wedding minister in Japan, and that money came in very, very handy for me. And so I'm grateful. Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for the job. I'm grateful for the experience, and I got a real insight into the whole romance industry by doing this. So I personally feel like I benefited a lot from it. But the grooms, they paid for it, and the families, like, man, this is a lot of money. Jeez, man, people are spending like that money. The average wedding is so expensive, right? People could be buying houses, man, getting something to live in, man. You know what I mean? Getting a business going, making some money, having a good life, right? I just don't get it. It's just amazing. This thing still goes on. It's amazing to me that guys still put their head on the chopping block, like year after year, fucking same old thing, same old dress, same old band, same old fake distinctions. Man, it is fucking weak, man. There's nothing more fake than the wedding industry that I can think of in modern society. I think it's probably the most fake thing that exists that I've seen. I've seen a lot of things. I think it's the most fake, ceremony of all. Because at least at a funeral, there are people crying. Like, there are sad people. Like, it's not fake. Funerals, you're saying goodbye, man. And I've been to funerals and I've cried. And I've been to funerals where nobody cared about the guy, too. It's not like every one is meaningful. But, I would say by and large, there's a need for a time to say goodbye when somebody passes on. There's a need for it, There really is. It's a necessary grieving, letting go, a rebirth that happens at funerals. There's a purpose, right? And the wedding's purpose, man, it's just, I don't know, What do you guys think? All right. Thanks for listening. All right, guys.